Hello y'all on YouTube, this is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I have a very special Rob's Ramblings. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that you may have run into, and I'm curious how you handle it. It's sort of similar to, what you do when you get a new car. My first scratch on my knife, my first ding, my first smudge mark, whatever you want to call it, and maybe especially on one of those really nice knives you've been wanting for a long time and you've enjoyed carrying. How do you handle it? How do you deal with that frustration? Were you frustrated at all? Are you the kind of person that just, it's like you're like a duck, it's like water rolling off your back? Or did you where you're, I can't believe that happened to my knife, or maybe somebody borrowed your knife and they did that and it was one of your nice knives. Maybe, you let somebody look at it and they dropped it or what have you. How do you deal with that type of frustration? How do you, I think we're a little crooked here. We're gonna have to straighten that. Sorry about that. Let's get that straight there, yeah. Sorry, it's still a little crooked. If you're OCD, it's going to really bother you, and if you're not, then you're not going to care. But at least try to not make that a distraction for some of you guys who might be really bothered by that. Anyways, how do you deal with that frustration? It's kind of a Rob's Ramblings here, it definitely. And the question really is the frustration. How do you deal with that first scratch or mark on my pocket knife or my blade or my handle or whatever? So here's my Arnaud Bernard iMamba. Beautiful knife, one of my favorite high-end knives. It's a semi-custom, made in Africa that I was able to get a hold of because really great exchange rate. Beautiful, beautiful knife. It's got this high-polished RWL 34 blade steel. Just really, really, really nice. And I should probably get a little cloth here and let's clean that off. You can see on this one, I don't know if you can see it, there is, I can't quite see it here. I'm trying to show you. Yeah, there's like some scratches on the blade. And I think I have on this side, there's a scratch on the blade. But then also my handle, you can see some of the rub marks from carrying it, right? And then you can see over here some big rub marks also. And I remember when I had this knife, it was so beautiful, and I really, wanted to carry it and make it just this really beautiful knife that I wasn't gonna mess with or whatever. And then I was carrying it, and of course I carried it with, I was working part-time at a range as a range officer, and so it hit my belt that I was, my duty belt, and so it got some scuff marks, and I was like, oh, why did I bring this knife with me? And I was really bummed. But then I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I mean, it's such a minor thing, and it's being used. And every knife, I've always said, every knife I have, every knife that I carry, or every knife that I buy, I carry. I want to be able to use them. I don't want them to be safe queens, right? I have one safe queen, really. It's my dad's knife he bought before World War II. It's a fixed blade. And I mean, I have my first blade. It's a Gerber Easy Out. I have that one. I would still use it and put it in my car for use. It's a knife I bought back in 1988, so it's old, but it still works fine, right? USA made knife. They still make them USA made. Really decent knife, as far as for the materials and what you pay for, right? Not anything compared to my knives now, for sure, but it was my first knife, so it was important. I remember when I got the scuff, I was really bummed and I was really frustrated. And then, I thought after a while, I said, I want to use my knives. I want to carry my knives. It's one thing when you really beat the snot out of it and you ruin it on a knife that maybe you don't want to do that to. That's fine. But it's another thing when it's a knife that you like carrying. I think the frustration there is only that should you use maybe another tool for what you were doing, or was it not the right knife to carry for the moment, right? I deal with the clips all the time. The clips are going to get scuffed, they're going to get dragged, they're going to get hung, maybe bent, but they will definitely be bumped into seat belts, walking through chairs, whatever, will scuff them, and that happens, right? So to me, those frustration things, I've kind of accepted, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. But, I'm guessing for some of you guys, if you could collect higher end knives, really nice knives, $600 and above, like the Herman and the Koenig and the Shirogorov and other knives like that, I'm sure you guys, that would bother you probably a whole lot more. And I wonder, would you carry those knives if that was a concern? And do you carry them? And if you don't, is it still a knife worth your collection? And you know, that's a question that only you can answer. For me, my answer for that is every knife I buy, I want to carry, right? And so if I'm not willing to carry one of those knives, then I probably shouldn't buy it. I at some point would love to get a Herman. I would, but it would be still want to be able to carry it, and it would be a lower end, not super fancy Herman, a very base model, right? For instance, like this Arno Bernard, this is a very base model. You can get it with all sorts of inserts and everything, and they become way more expensive than this. But it is a knife that I enjoy carrying, and thus the reason why it's in my collection, right? Now, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You know, I mean, I have a new one here. This one I really enjoyed. This is the EMP EDC Relative. And I don't know if I have, yeah, I've already got a little scuff mark right there. You can see it. I don't know if you can see that. It's like a little, maybe minor ding. We're hitting something, you know, but this thing is beautiful. And I mean, it's set up so that I think the scuff marks are going to be minimally noticed, really. But, oh, you can see a little here. But to me, it's like, I don't know. I'm okay with that. This is a knife that I intend to carry and use, and so I'm okay with that. I know with this one it was a little more noticeable because it was so pristine. It was so perfect on here. And I'm like, well, one of two things. I'm either going to stop carrying this and leave it perfect, or I'm going to carry it and be okay with it, right? That was my frustration. That was my rambling in dealing with this. I don't know where you stand on that, and I don't know how you feel about that. Maybe you have some thoughts, some insights on this. Maybe your perspective is a little different, you know. Maybe you have an idea that I haven't even thought about, because I'm always learning. I'm a relatively young collector. I've only been really collecting for maybe 4 years, 5 years now, I guess. I don't know. But maybe really collecting for 3 years, right? So so I am a relatively young collector as far as knives, and I'm not one of these who's been collecting 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? But I like the knives that I do collect, and I enjoy what I collect. And I plan to keep getting more knives, and you know, things that I'm not going to carry, I'm going to take out of my rotation. So this knife is really nice. A recent one that I just got, and you know, I love the look of this knife. It's just pristine and gorgeous. Now, it's already set up to kind of be ready for that kind of nick and that kind of bump and everything, you know, and it is a black stone-washed blade, so, you know, I'm okay. It's not a DLC or a Cerakote, so I know it's gonna wear down at some point. I'm okay with that, right? But, you know, am I gonna be okay with a big, you know, scratch or ding or rub mark against this? And I am, because, you know, I plan to use this knife. This is one of those that I plan to use, and what is my frustration going to be? You know, it's going to be relatively low. It really is. Oh, here's one that I got this. This blade was perfect, right? And I'll show you what I'm talking about. And then, of course, I started cutting things, because this is it's almost like a hand satin finish. I definitely believe it's a satin finish of some kind. I'm not sure what kind of finish it is, but let me see if I can get this off. But you can definitely see I've got some scuff marks, some scratch marks on this, because it's almost a polished, kind of a polished blade. And so I've already got the scuff marks. And I remember when I got it, I was like, I don't remember doing it. So it was more like, oh, where'd that come from? I was kind of disappointed. I was bummed. But I knew I'd used it, so it was probably my fault. But I thought, you know, I like this knife. I want to use this knife. You know, it's a knife that I enjoy, so I need to expect that, especially with this type of polished blade. That's just a given. I mean, short of getting like a stonewash blade or something, I don't see how you can avoid that, right? That's just something that happens with knives, right? I think here, like, this is beautifully blacked out, the live wire by Kershaw, beautifully blacked out. But at some point, I'm going to scuff this Cerakoted steel clip. There's no question. I'm going to scuff this aluminum handle. It's going to happen. I'm going to scuff this. Now, this is a stonewash blade, so it's going to be prone to less visibility of issues, right? It's really nice camouflage type of finish here, so that you can see less of the usage on it. But this is going to get buffed up. It's going to get rubbed up if I keep using this, which I will. And I've got to be okay with that, right? So that would be a frustration, you know, something to have. Then you have something like this right here, you know, my Wee Knives Mini Malice, a Ferrum Forge design. I love the stone-washed, titanium anodized kind of handle. Beautiful. But then you have the satin finish. And satin finishes aren't as bad as, I don't know what you call it. I think it's satin finish, or is this a sand finish? Well, I forget what you call this. I think I'm mixing them. I think that's a belt satin, and then I'm guessing maybe this is a sand. Is this a what they called a sandblasted? Maybe this is sandblasted. Yeah, sandblasted kind of a finish, but it will show up scuffs when they get in there deep enough. But it still will hide it a little bit better than a reflective, almost polished satin finish, right? So, but I'm gonna have those scuff marks. It's gonna happen, and I may already have them on here, but you don't see it because of the way it's made. So I'm okay with that, right? But there is that frustration that you have when you have that blade so new and you're like, oh, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that happened, right? And you're like, that's going to happen, especially if you have knives and you have any of them in your collection long enough. You just have to accept that at some point. And if you can't, then you got to keep everything locked up in a cage where you never use it and only use little junk knives that you can either, you know, replace, I guess, or throw out or whatever if you don't like those. So that's kind of my thought on that. And so, you know, it kind of leads to the second question I guess you could have on this. Are you the kind of person that if you get a scratch on a favorite blade, what do? Do you get it sent to someone who can fix the blade, redo the blade? Do you buy a second knife to replace that one, and then that second one is perfectly pristine and stored away, and you have this one that you're using? I know some people who do that. You know, that's not for me. I buy one knife of anything I have. I rarely will have two similar knives. I may have, like, I have a pair of 3 and a pair of 2 from Spyderco, but they're significantly different in size, though they're very similar in knives. But that I'm okay with, right? I have the QSP Mini, the QSP Mini Penguin, the QSP Penguin, and the QSP Penguin Plus. I like those. I have the Baby Banter, the Banter, and the Big Banter. I like those. They're so significantly different that those are worth having different variations of. So there is that, and I'm okay with that, right? So you have to ask yourself, you know, are you going to have 2 of those knives? Are you going to replace it? Are you going to send it off to some guy who's going to refinish it? Maybe put a new Cerakote, maybe a new PVD finish on there. They're going to regrind the blade, maybe to get rid of scuff marks. Are they going to put a different type of finish on there? Are they going to change it out? Are they going to anodize it? Whatever. What are you going to do? You know, are you the type of person that does that? And I find myself, I'm not. You know, I'm okay with that. And I also know what the purpose of those knives are going to be and what I'm going to use them for. And so you have to ask yourself those questions. And, you know, are you willing to buy 2 or 3 of the same knives? Are you willing to replace it? You know, I mean, you know, some people, it's your thing. You know, it's your collection. It's your knives. You do what you want. But if you're so OCD'd you have to do that, you know, then I guess you do that. You know, just get your 2 knives of the same thing. But what do you do if you can only get a hold of one of a particular knife? Does that knife never get used? I mean, I guess that's reasonable for someone who collects them like that, for that to happen. It wouldn't be for me, because I wouldn't ever want to buy a knife I couldn't use, right? It's just me, you know. I think if someone gave me, you know, a really fancy Sierra Grower for something like that, I would still want to use it. You know, if it was gifted to me to use, you know, I don't know if I could not use that, right? If I were able to get a hold of one at a great deal, then I'd still want to use it, right? Unless I had plans to use that to trade or sell for something else, you know, that I really wanted. That, you know, that's different, right? That's not collecting. That's kind of bartering and moving inventory around for the sake of increasing your own inventory of what you want. I get that, right? And sometimes I'll buy a knife that I realize I'm not going to keep this at all, and so I'll hardly use it because I want to resell it right away. Because I'm like, nope, this was not a deal for me. Just gonna put it back on the market and sell it. Somebody else enjoy it. And I've done that. I've done that before. I had a Quite Carry Drift. I felt that about it, but not this Quite Carry. I like this one a lot. This one is just fantastic, right? I felt that way about some other button locks that I've had. I've done that, but this one, no, this is really, really great. I really like this knife right here. It's definitely a recommended knife, but I'm still torn with this clip. It's super tight, and if it rips too many pants at some point, it's something of a concern for me. That's a major aesthetic. I'm thinking of taking the clip off and seeing if I can round that and make it that a little different on my my belt sander, right? Just to kind of buff it out, make it a little smoother. Maybe it'll slide on and off better. I'm thinking of doing that with this, right? But that's just one thing that I have, right? And so the question is, but I like this knife otherwise. I mean, I should, because I had it on pre-order for like a year. It's the longest pre-order I've ever had. And I'm glad I finally got it. It was kind of very frustrating. It's one of my reasons why I don't do pre-orders much anymore now, because waiting that long is just kind of ridiculous for me, right? So, that's up to you. Some of you guys may be fine with pre-orders, and you go for it, right? But for me, that's kind of where I'm at. So if this gets scratched up and I can't get another one, it's a Trevor Burger, what would I do? Well, I'd be fine because I'm using it. Now, there's a Trevor Burger Custom that they were selling, and that one's like $800. Would I buy that and use it? Well, if I bought it, you'd bet I would use it. But would I be okay with using it and getting it scratched and buff and marks and everything like that on there? If I'm not, I shouldn't buy it. At least not for me, right? If I'm not going to use it, that's where I'm at. I would feel like that's a waste of money put on a knife that I'm not going to enjoy, that I could buy other knives with and enjoy more. So that's where I'm at. And that's really the mentality of where I'm at. Now, if you have unlimited funds and you can buy all those knives and it's not a concern, then, you're just going to laugh at what I'm saying. You will. I get it. And that's okay. That's okay, because we're at different paths and different roads and different journeys of our knife collecting. So anyways, those are my thoughts on, what do you do with that first scratch? What do you do? Do you get another knife? What are your thoughts on this whole thing? I'd love to hear your comments down below. Where you at in your knife journey? I'd love to hear what you've gone through, what you did. Please feel free to leave your comments. I try to interact and respond as possible. If you have an idea for a future Rob's Rambling, I would love to hear about that. I would love to incorporate that and do that in the future. I'm always looking for something cool, and I learn a lot of things talking to folks. And some of these Rob's Ramblings came up from my conversations with folks, and so it made me think, hey, what about this? So I would love to hear that. So if you enjoyed this content, like if you found this content fun, interesting, worthwhile, at least engaging, whether for good or for bad, please consider liking this video. I sure would appreciate it. It helps me to keep producing more video. And if you like this video, maybe consider subscribing to my channel for more content. And if you've already subscribed, maybe consider hitting that notification button so you can be notified of upcoming content that I will be dropping. And if you haven't already, maybe check me out at Robs_nerdy_knives on Instagram. Again, that's Robs_nerdy_knives on Instagram. I sure would appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.